In this screencast, we will cover 6 different types of pronouns. My goal is not that you are able to rattle off definitions of each particular pronoun. As you'll see, some words like that and whose can function as different types of pronouns. And some pronouns can also act as other parts of speech entirely, so memorizing a list of pronouns is not necessarily helpful. Instead, you should be able to describe what the pronoun is doing in any particular sentence. Reading is all about understanding context, and we are studying our 4-level sentences as a way to pick apart the context of a sentence and to analyze the function of words and eventually phrases and clauses and all that fun stuff within that sentence. Not only will this help us to be better readers, but it will also help us to be better writers by helping us craft clear sentences in our own writing. So, let's start with possessive pronouns. We touched on these a little bit in the last screencast. So these pronouns show possession, as the name suggests. They show us ownership. Possessive pronouns function as what grammar nerds might call determiners because they give us more information about the noun that they precede. So an example could be my book or her suitcase. In that case, they are telling us more information about those nouns. Now, interrogative pronouns are used to ask questions. Their name comes from the verb interrogate, which reminds me of a crime drama. So think of any variation of Law and Order. At some point in each episode, the cops pull a suspect down to the station and ask him a bunch of questions. And you can bet they'll be using some interrogative pronouns like who, whose, whom, which, or what. Demonstrative pronouns demonstrate or indicate something. So they really just let your reader or listener know that you are referring to a particular item. Although you won't name that item outright because you are using pronouns, remember the handy shortcuts of the English language. So sometimes these pronouns can also be used as adjectives. In the green sentence, this is a beautiful day, this is functioning as the subject of a sentence. Only nouns or pronouns can be subjects of a sentence. So we know that this here is a pronoun. Now in the yellow sentence, this day is beautiful, this is functioning as an adjective that is modifying day. Which day? Oh yeah, this day. So your demonstrative pronouns are this, that, these, and those. Now, relative pronouns introduce relative or dependent adjective clauses. A relative clause relates to the main clause. So both example sentences over here use the pronoun that, but the green sentence is the only one that uses it as a relative pronoun. The chocolate cake that I loved is all gone. The relative clause that I loved is underlined. A relative clause can't stand alone as a complete thought, which is why it is a dependent clause. That I loved is not a complete thought. The complete thought in the green sentence is the chocolate cake is all gone. So although I loved the cake, that fact isn't the main idea here. It just relates, so it's stuck in a relative clause. In the yellow sentence, that is a delicious cake, that is functioning as the subject of this sentence. So recall our sentence on the previous slide about the beautiful day. This is a beautiful day. The this from that sentence and the that in this sentence are both doing the same work of indicating a particular thing. In one case, a day, and in another, a cake, but they're both demonstrative pronouns. And although, as I said before, it's not necessary to memorize list upon list of pronoun types, it will be helpful for you to begin to pay attention to when relative clauses like the one in the green sentence start. Most of the sentences we have looked at so far as examples have been short and they've had a structure that's what we call simple. They just have kind of one main idea. This green sentence with the addition of a dependent relative clause is now a complex sentence because it's got 2 clauses there. As we work through the 4 levels of grammar, we will begin thinking about how to vary the sentence structure in our own writing, and including dependent clauses like this is just one way to do that. Relative pronouns that will come across pretty frequently will be who, whose, whom, which, and that. Okay, at this point, you might be wondering something that my oldest daughter, Evelyn, wonders just about every 5 minutes anytime we drive anywhere in the car, which is, are we there yet? And yes, we are almost there. 2 more types of pronouns to go. Well, kind of 3, but I'm going to call it 2.5 because 2 of them are basically the same. And those are intensive and reflexive pronouns. These ones are easy to recognize. They end in either self or selves, and that's pretty much it. The only difference between the two is in their purpose or function. So, intensive pronouns are not necessary to complete the main idea of a sentence. I like to think of intensive pronouns as either bragging or blaming. They don't serve any grammatical purpose, but they do change the tone of your sentence. So, for example, I myself climbed Mount Everest. Sounds like I'm kind of bragging there. Or I could say, my sister herself wrecked our dad's car. And that sounds more like I'm blaming, which isn't technically true because it was actually I myself who wrecked our stepdad's car, but that's a whole other long story. Consider the difference between these two sentences. I myself grew that giant pumpkin, like we have in purple, or just I grew that giant pumpkin. With the intensive pronoun in the purple sentence, you're clearly looking for some props about your giant pumpkin. Without it, you're just stating a fact. Reflexive pronouns, however, are necessary to complete the sentence. They can function as direct objects that receive some sort of action. Consider the example sentence in green. Allison does not trust herself. Now, if we don't have herself in that sentence, we don't know what it is that Allison doesn't trust. Does she not trust her teacher, her friend, her weird neighbor who grows giant pumpkins? It's just not clear. And in speaking of being a bit unclear, we will end with indefinite pronouns, which by their very nature don't quite give us the whole picture. There are many indefinite pronouns, but the common ones are listed here. So they tend to end in one or buddy, like anyone or somebody. And then there are some irregular ones too, like each and all and things like that. Here's a quick example from one of Evelyn's favorite movies.
The trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrows.
Now, when Zazu complains that nobody knows the trouble he's seen, he's not directing his anger at a particular person, although Scar would be a really good place to start here. By using the indefinite pronoun nobody, Zazu heightens the drama of the situation. Nobody is a form of exaggeration here. If Zazu referred to particular characters, it would instead make his plight seem less significant. And there you have it. We have arrived at the end of our discussion about pronouns.